I told my husband our son was trying to have him declared medically unfit and take the company from him. I put the board papers in his hands myself. One page was fake. I had made it that morning. 3 months earlier, nobody in my family would have believed I could do something like that. My name is Evelyn Caldwell, and for 37 years I was Mrs. Richard Caldwell in every sense that mattered. Richard was the architect whose name went on towers. I was the woman beside him who knew which clients to invite, which donors to charm, and which disasters to keep out of photographs. At 63, I still looked immaculate before breakfast. My hair was always done. My nails were perfect. I trained 3 mornings a week, and even my casual clothes were tailored. I wore perfume at home and pearl earrings during thunderstorms. People called it vanity. I called it discipline. When I met Richard, he was 31, brilliant, arrogant, and working from a leaking Brooklyn office. I introduced him to his first serious hotel client. One project became 5, then 20, and Caldwell Architecture became a national name. Our only son, Julian, grew up inside that world. By 38, he was CIO of Caldwell Design Holdings, the empire he had built around his father's original architecture firm. Development, urban planning, interiors, real estate strategy. The press loved the story. Father built the firm. Son built the holding company. Richard still held the legacy voting shares, and everyone had always understood that one day they would pass to Julian. Julian had a 12-year-old daughter, Sophie, my only granddaughter, who called me Nana, and treated Caldwell offices like a second home. I believed that made us untouchable. I believed being Richard's wife, Julian's mother, and Sophie's grandmother meant there would always be a place with my name on it. The beginning of the end did not look dramatic. It looked like a pill bottle. Richard was 66 when he had what the doctors called a minor cardiac event during a board retreat in Colorado. I hated that phrase from the second I heard it. There is nothing minor about your husband gripping a conference table because his chest feels wrong. He was fine, technically. No major blockage, no surgery, medication, diet changes, stress management, follow-up appointments. But I had spent decades watching Richard behave as if exhaustion and death happened to other people. After Colorado, I could not watch that anymore, so I took over, not the company. Him. At first, he let me. I organized his medications in a leather travel case. I called his cardiologist when he skipped follow-ups. I told his assistant Nina not to schedule client dinners after 8. I removed bourbon from the house. I replaced the salt in the kitchen. I asked the driver to text me when Richard left the office after dark. He complained, but lightly. "You've turned my life into a hospital brochure," he told me once. "You're alive to complain about it," I said. He kissed my forehead, and I took that as proof I was right. Within 6 months, I had opinions about everything. His flights, his meetings, his food, his blood pressure, the number of stairs in a building before the elevator inspection was finished. If a client invited him skiing, I said no before Richard answered. If Julian scheduled a late strategy session, I called Julian and moved it. If Nina booked an early flight, I made her change it. I had reasons for every single thing I did. I called it love. The first real crack happened at Julian's headquarters on Madison Avenue. Caldwell Design Holdings occupied 7 floors of a renovated pre-war building that Richard publicly claimed to hate and privately adored. Julian had called a family lunch. That alone should have warned me. Our family did dinners. Lunch was for announcements and emergencies. I arrived 12 minutes early in an ivory suit, because I always arrived early when Julian said something was casual. Richard was already there. He was eating French fries. I stopped in the doorway. "Richard." He looked at me, then at the fry in his hand. "What?" "You know what?" Julian closed his eyes. "Mom, please. I am not saying anything unreasonable. You just walked into my office and looked at a potato like it insulted you." Richard ate the fry slowly while looking directly at me. "Your cardiologist gave you a sodium target," I said. "My cardiologist did not put you on payroll." Julian looked down at the table. That was the first time Richard had said something like that in front of our son. Not cruel, not loud, but public. I sat down. What is this lunch about? Julian pushed a thin folder toward his father. We have an offer to acquire Mercer Urban Systems. I knew the name. Every person near money in our world knew the name. Mercer was a West Coast design and engineering consultancy with infrastructure contracts, airport work, and enough government relationships to make Julian salivate. How much? Richard asked. $840 million enterprise value. I stared at Julian. You're buying it? I want to. Richard opened the folder. With what structure? Julian began explaining debt, equity, outside investors, bridge financing, and a new holding company arrangement that would move some of Richard's legacy shares into a voting trust. I understood more than they assumed. What does the voting trust change? I asked. Julian paused. Richard did not. It makes succession cleaner. Cleaner for whom? For the company. I looked at my husband. Your shares were always going to Julian. They still will. Then why does anything need to change? Richard leaned back. Because companies don't like depending on my pulse. The sentence landed badly. He knew it would. I looked at Julian. Did you put that phrase in his head? Julian's face hardened. Mom, no, I am asking a question. You're asking whether I'm manipulating Dad because we're discussing succession planning for a 70-year-old company founder with a heart history. Your father is 66. Thank you, Richard said. I was worried I'd aged 4 years over lunch. Neither of them laughed. I should have stopped. Instead, I asked for the full documents. Julian said no. That stunned me more than anything else. No, they're board materials. I'm family. You're not a director. I helped build this company. Julian's jaw tightened, and nobody is denying that. That sounded exactly like denying it. Richard closed the folder. Evelyn, enough. It was the tone, the old tone. The one he used with junior architects when a discussion was finished. He had never used it on me. I left lunch before dessert. 3 days later, I found out Richard had flown to Seattle. I found out from Instagram. A developer posted a photograph from a private dinner. Richard was in the background, wearing the navy suit I had told him not to pack, because it needed tailoring. I called him immediately. He did not answer. I called Nina. She answered on the second ring. Mrs. Caldwell, where is my husband staying? There was a pause. I'm not sure I should. Nina, he's at the Four Seasons. What time is his return flight? Another pause. He asked me not to share his itinerary unless it's an emergency. I actually laughed. Not because it was funny, because sometimes humiliation comes out of your mouth sounding like amusement. He asked you not to share his itinerary with his wife? Yes. Since when? Monday. Monday was the day after the lunch. I hung up. Then I called Richard 6 more times. He finally answered at 11:30 that night, New York time. What is wrong? He asked. What is wrong is that your assistant has been instructed to hide your travel schedule from me. She isn't hiding it. She refused to tell me because I asked her not to. Why? Because I wanted to take a business trip without getting 12 messages about my blood pressure. I sent you 3 messages in Denver. You called the hotel kitchen in Denver because you ordered steak. There was silence. Then Richard said very quietly, Do you hear yourself anymore? I hear a wife trying to keep her husband alive. I hear a woman trying to manage a man who did not ask to be managed. You did ask. In the hospital. I was sedated. That is disgusting. It is also true. I hung up on him. The next morning I had the locks changed on the liquor cabinet. I wish I were joking. When Richard came home 2 days later, he stood in front of that cabinet with his suitcase still beside him. You changed the lock. Yes. In my house. Our house. My bourbon. Your cardiologist. He turned around so fast I stopped talking. Do not say the word cardiologist to me again tonight. I stared at him. He walked upstairs. That night he slept in the guest room for the first time in 37 years. The next morning, he acted normal. That was worse. He drank coffee, read the paper, kissed my cheek, went to work. For 2 weeks he was polite. Richard's politeness had always been dangerous. Anger exhausted him quickly. Politeness meant he had started making decisions. I called Julian. What is your father doing? Working. Do not do that with me. Do what? Answer like a lawyer. Julian sighed. He's busy. Busy with Mercer? Yes. And the voting trust? A pause. Yes. Has he signed anything? I can't discuss board matters with you. I gave birth to you. That is not a securities exemption. I almost smiled. Almost. Then I said, Is your father leaving me? The silence changed. I knew my son too well. Julian, I don't know. You do know something. I know he's unhappy. With me? Mom. With me. Yes. I sat down. For 1 second, every elegant room around me looked fake. The silk curtains, the antique desk, the photograph of Richard and me in Venice 20 years earlier. I hated Julian for that one syllable, then hated myself for it. Why didn't you tell me? I asked. Because every time Dad says he needs space, you treat it like a symptom. What does that mean? It means last week he told you he wanted 1 weekend alone at the house in Connecticut, and you called his doctor to ask whether isolation was a sign of depression. My face went hot. How do you know that? Because the doctor called Dad. I closed my eyes. I was concerned. I know. You say that like it is a flaw. I'm saying Dad feels watched. He is watched because he almost died. He did not almost die. You weren't there. Neither were you. That hurt more than it should have. Because he was right. Richard had been surrounded by executives, doctors, and paramedics. I had been in Manhattan, 3,000 miles away, staring at a phone. Maybe part of me never came back from those 4 hours when I did not know whether my husband would live. But fear is not a good excuse when it becomes someone else's cage. I did not know that yet. Or maybe I did and did not care. A week later, Richard took me to dinner, not our usual place, a quiet restaurant in Tribeca where nobody would interrupt us. He ordered fish. I noticed he did not ask me if it was acceptable. That irritated me, which should tell you how bad things had become. He waited until our wine arrived. Then he pushed the glass away without drinking. I rented an apartment. I looked at him. What? Downtown? For what? For me. I actually thought he was joking. Then I saw his face. No, he blinked. No, no, we are not doing this. He leaned back. There. That. What? I tell you, I rented an apartment. And your first response is that I am not allowed. I did not say you were not allowed. You said we are not doing this because this is absurd. You are angry. Fine. We will go to therapy. We will take a trip. You can spend more time in Connecticut. I don't want you assigning me recovery activities. Richard, I want to live alone for a while. I lowered my voice. You have never lived alone in your life. I lived alone before I met you. You lived over a laundromat and ate cereal for dinner. Yes, I survived. You are 66 with a cardiac history. His eyes closed. I heard it the second the words left my mouth, the exact thing he had begged me not to say. When he opened his eyes, something had changed. I'm moving Friday. No, this is not a vote. What about the company? I am still chairman. What about Julian? He is still our son. What about me? For the first time all evening, Richard looked sad. I don't know. That frightened me more than I don't love you. I could fight another woman, a scandal, greed, even an affair. I could not fight I don't know. So I invented an enemy. Her name was Nina Shaw. She was 42, divorced, competent, attractive in that quiet way. Women become attractive to powerful men because they never seem to need anything from them. She had worked for Richard for 6 years. I had liked her until the Seattle trip. Then I began noticing everything. She knew his coffee order, his suits, his calendar, and she could get him on the phone when I could not. I decided they were sleeping together. Once you decide something like that, evidence appears everywhere. One Thursday, I followed her. I am not proud of it, but I did. Nina left the office at 6:20 and took a car downtown. I had my driver follow from half a block away. She got out in front of a residential building on Leonard Street, Richard's new building. I sat in the back seat and felt something inside me go cold. Wait here, I told my driver. I went inside. The doorman recognized me before I could decide whether that was good or bad. Mrs. Caldwell, what apartment is my husband in? His face changed. I'm sorry, ma'am, I can't. I am his wife. Yes, ma'am. What floor? He looked terrified. Good doormen are trained to survive impossible marriages. He survived mine by pretending to receive a call, so I waited near the elevators. When Nina came down 20 minutes later, she stopped dead. "Mrs. Caldwell, what were you doing upstairs?" She looked toward the lobby desk. "I was dropping off documents." "At 7 in the evening?" "Yes." "What documents?" "I can't discuss them." "Of course you can't." Her face changed. "You think I'm having an affair with your husband." I said nothing. "Oh my God. Do not act offended." "I am offended." "Then answer the question." "There is no question." "Are you sleeping with him?" "No." "Have you ever?" "No." "Do you want to?" She stared at me. Then she laughed once, quietly. Instead she said, "Mrs. Caldwell, the documents I delivered were from his attorney." Everything stopped. "What attorney?" She regretted it immediately. I saw it. "His personal attorney," she said. "For what?" "I've already said too much." I stepped closer. "For what?" She looked at me with pity. I would have preferred hatred. Then she walked away. The next morning, I called every divorce lawyer I knew socially before breakfast. By noon, I had retained one. By 3, I learned the second surprise. The house in Manhattan was not jointly owned anymore. Technically, it had not been for 14 years. I had forgotten. During the financial crisis, when Caldwell Group had nearly collapsed under 2 frozen developments, Richard and I had moved several personal assets into trusts as part of a broader restructuring. The townhouse had gone into a family asset trust. Julian was the primary beneficiary, and my lifetime occupancy rights lasted only while I was married to Richard. I read the clause 3 times. I called Julian. He was in Dallas. "Did you know the townhouse goes to your trust if your father divorces me?" Silence. Julian. "Yes." I stood up so fast my chair fell backward. "You knew?" "It's been that way for years." "I did not know." "You signed the restructuring." "I signed 400 pages while your father was trying to save the company." "That doesn't mean nobody told you." "You knew." "I knew the trust structure." "And you never thought to mention that if my husband left me, I could lose my home?" Dad has not filed anything. He has a divorce lawyer." Another silence. "You knew that too." I knew he was talking to someone. My own son. I could hear airport announcements behind him. "Whose side are you on?" I asked. "That's not fair." "And it is a simple question." "No, it isn't. You run the company your father built. You will inherit his shares. You stand to benefit if I am removed from everything." "That is insane." "Is it?" "Yes." "Then say you are on my side." "I am not choosing sides in your marriage." That was his answer. I did something worse 2 days later. Julian's lawyers had circulated a 3-page continuity memo about what would happen if Richard ever became unable to serve. A copy landed in an old family office inbox that was still connected to my tablet. The real document was harmless. It described temporary authority in a genuine emergency. I added a 4th page. I copied the letterhead and formatting and wrote that, because of Richard's recent cardiac event, counsel recommended an independent medical capacity review and the immediate suspension of his voting authority. I made it sound as if Julian had requested it. He had not. I told myself I was forcing Richard to see what succession really meant. The next morning, he came to the townhouse for his passport. I was waiting in the breakfast room. I told my husband our son was trying to have him declared medically unfit and take the company from him. I put the board papers in his hands myself. 1 page was fake. I had made it that morning. Richard read it twice. "Julian authorized this?" I had one chance to stop. "Yes." He called Julian immediately and put him on speaker. "You want a medical review of my capacity?" Richard demanded. "What are you talking about?" Julian said. "The continuity memo. Page 4. "There is no page 4. Richard looked at me. I said, "Maybe they sent you a different version." Julian heard my voice. "Mom is there?" 12 minutes later, outside counsel was on the line. Their memo had only 3 digitally numbered pages. They had never recommended a capacity review. Julian had never asked them to. My fake page had no document number. I had matched the font, margins, footer, even the paper. I had missed one tiny number. Richard sat across from me. "Did you make this?" "Yes." Julian went silent. Richard stared at me as if I were someone he had met that morning. You tried to make me believe my son was using my heart condition to steal my company. I was trying to stop you from handing him everything while shutting me out. So you forged a legal memo. 1 page. Julian laughed once through the speaker. There was nothing funny in it. You tried to start a war between me and Dad before the biggest financing meeting of the year. I was protecting this family. Richard stood. No, you were protecting your place in it. I reached for his hand. He moved it away before I touched him. That had never happened in 37 years. Do not call my doctor, my assistant, my clients, or anyone at the company for me again, he said. I am your wife, for now. By afternoon, Julian had disabled every company and family office credential I still had. The next morning, security stopped me in the Caldwell lobby. I'd been walking into those offices for 39 years. Mrs. Caldwell, I'm sorry. All family visitors have to be announced now. Call Julian. They already did. And he's unavailable. My own son had locked me out of a building I believed I had helped create. That was the day fear became anger. Anger made me efficient. I reviewed every trust, board list, property title, and foundation document I could access. I discovered that my importance was everywhere, and my ownership was almost nowhere. My name was on gala programs, invitations, and magazine photographs, but the company belonged to shareholders. The townhouse belonged to a trust. The Connecticut house belonged to another trust. The art was split among entities. Even the private plane and the wine cellar belonged to entities, not to me. I had built a life around access, not possession, and Richard knew it. That thought consumed me. A week later, he came to the townhouse to collect books. I was waiting in the library. He looked thinner, not sick, free. I hated that more. You look well, I said. So do you. I always look well. He almost smiled. For half a second, we were ourselves again. Then I saw the box in his hands. You are really doing this? Yes. Over French fries and a few phone calls. He put the box on a chair. Do you really think that is what this is about? You tell me. I have. No, you have given me phrases, space, autonomy, feeling watched. You sound like a therapist. I sound like a man who has asked his wife to stop calling his assistants, doctors, drivers, clients, and son every time he makes a decision she dislikes. I kept your life together for nearly 40 years. You did. I kept clients in this company when you offended them. Yes. I handled your father's funeral while you were in Tokyo. Yes. I raised Julian while you were flying around the world building monuments to yourself. His face changed. That is not fair. Neither is pretending I am some obsessive stranger who invaded your life. I am not pretending that. Then what are you saying? He looked at me for a long time. I am saying I loved being cared for until being cared for became the price of having no privacy. I had no answer. He picked up the box. Then I asked the question I should not have asked. Is there someone else? No. Nina? No. Someone in Seattle? No. Then what are you leaving me for? He answered immediately. Work. I laughed. He did not. You are leaving your wife for an architecture company? I am leaving because when I am at the company, I still feel like myself. And with me? He looked down. With you, I feel like a patient. That sentence followed me for weeks. I heard it while getting dressed. I heard it at lunch. I heard it when I was lying in bed alone, a patient, as though 37 years could be reduced to a medication schedule. Then came the gala. Caldwell Design Holdings was celebrating the Mercer acquisition. They had closed the deal, despite me, maybe partly because of me, since Julian had moved faster after the lender scare and locked the financing before any new questions could spread. The event was held at a museum Richard's firm had renovated 15 years earlier. I was still on the invitation. I checked 3 times. I wore black silk, diamonds Richard had given me on our 30th anniversary, and my hair swept back exactly the way he used to like it. I looked flawless. That mattered. I dressed for war. Julian saw me first. His face tightened. You came. I was invited. Mom, I am not going to make a scene. He looked unconvinced. I mean it. Then I saw Richard. He was across the room with Nina, 2 board members, and the governor of a western state where Caldwell had just won a transit project. He looked happy, not young, not transformed, just happy. I had not seen him look that way with me in a long time. I walked over. Nina excused herself immediately. "Smart woman." Richard looked at me. "You look beautiful." "Thank you." That hurt too, because he meant it, and it changed nothing. A photographer approached. "Mr. and Mrs. Caldwell." "Together?" Richard hesitated. 1 second, I felt it. Then he stood beside me. I slipped my hand through his arm. His body went rigid. The flash went off. I whispered, "Smile." He whispered back, "Don't." "Don't what?" "Stage us. We are married. Not for much longer." I turned to him. "What?" He looked toward Julian. My son was watching from across the room. "I filed this morning." I stepped back. "You filed for divorce on the morning of your company gala?" "I didn't plan the dates to match." "Of course you didn't." "Evelyn, you let me come here knowing I would find out tonight. I assumed your attorney would tell you tomorrow." I smiled. "That is what I do when I'm about to become dangerous." "Congratulations on Mercer," I said. Then I walked away. I made it to the women's restroom before my hands started shaking. I locked myself in a stall. I did not cry. I pressed my palms together until the shaking stopped. Then I looked at myself in the mirror, reapplied lipstick, and returned to the ballroom. Richard was on stage. Julian stood beside him. Father and son, founder and successor. Richard spoke about legacy. That word nearly broke me. He thanked employees, partners, clients, and the board. Then he thanked Julian. "Our company was my first great obsession," he said. "My son turned it into something larger than I ever imagined." Everyone applauded. I did not. Then Richard said something I had not been told. "As part of this next chapter, I'll be transferring the balance of my voting shares into the Caldwell Family Succession Trust over the next 12 months. The applause grew louder. I stared at Julian. He looked straight ahead. The balance. All of it. Not someday. Not after Richard died. Now. The company was moving fully to our son while Richard was alive, and once the transfer was complete, there would be almost nothing left tying me to the company except history. My history. Not ownership. Not authority. History. I waited until the speech ended. Then I went after Julian. He made it halfway down a service corridor before I caught him. "You knew." He stopped. "Yes. You knew he was transferring everything. We've been planning it for months." "Before Colorado?" "No. After. Yes. So, while I was trying to keep your father alive, you too were planning how to make me irrelevant." "That is not what happened." "Then tell me what happened." "Dad wanted the succession settled. Because of me. Because of everything. Do not give me corporate language." Julian looked exhausted. "You called an investor about Dad's health. I was worried. You created a governance problem because you were angry at your husband. I created this family before you knew what governance meant, and this is exactly the problem." I went still. "What did you say? You think because you were there at the beginning, you own the ending." I slapped him. I wish I could say I did not, but I did. The sound cracked through the corridor. Julian did not move. His cheek reddened slowly. The second I saw it, I wanted to take it back. Then Richard appeared at the end of the hall. He had seen enough. Maybe all of it. "What the hell happened?" he asked. Julian turned away. "Nothing," I said. He spoke to me like I was a stranger. Richard looked at our son's face. "You hit him? He is my son." The words came out automatically. Richard stared at me. Then he said, "That does not make him yours to hit." I felt something snap. Everything is suddenly about what belongs to whom with you. "Evelyn, no. You want ownership? Fine." I walked back into the ballroom before either man could stop me. The band was between songs. A microphone still stood on the stage where Richard had spoken about legacy. I climbed the steps and took it. "Since we're celebrating family," I said, "perhaps Julian should explain how quickly a son gets comfortable with his father's chair." The room went quiet. Julian closed his eyes. "And tell them about the medical review," I added. Richard came onto the stage. "Evelyn, give me the microphone. Tell them I imagined it." He leaned toward the microphone still in my hand. The only person who invented a medical review was my wife. Nobody moved. Then he said it all. She forged a page of a board memo to make me believe Julian was trying to remove me from the company. My stomach dropped. Phones were already coming out. Richard, no. You wanted everyone to know what this family has become. Julian stepped onto the stage, his cheeks still red where I had slapped him. Tell them why I did it, I said. I don't know why you did it, Julian answered. Because Dad rented an apartment? Because I wouldn't give you board documents? Because nobody lets you decide everything anymore? Because I was being erased? Richard finally took the microphone. No, Evelyn, you were being told no. I stared at him. Then, in front of clients, donors, employees, and our son, he said, I filed for divorce this morning. Someone gasped. Richard looked at Julian. The company stays with him. I'm staying as design chairman. Then he looked at me, and I'm done being managed. I stepped off the stage. Nobody followed me. Nobody asked me to return to the ballroom. The divorce became ugly because I made it ugly. I challenged trusts, valuations, records, and argued that decades of unpaid work had increased the family enterprise. My lawyers kept reminding me that documents mattered more than memory. I had signed agreements. I had accepted trust structures. I had separate assets, yes, but nothing close to the wealth the public assumed I controlled. I had jewelry, investment accounts, a settlement, a generous one by normal standards, humiliating by mine. Then came the foundation. The Caldwell Foundation had been my kingdom. I had chaired it for 19 years, choosing grants, hosting dinners, and cultivating donors. 2 months after the gala, the board voted to replace me as chair. The motion came from an independent director. Julian abstained. That almost made it worse. Richard voted yes. I learned about it from an email at 7:14 in the morning. Governance modernization, that was the phrase. I read it in bed wearing a cream silk robe, with coffee on a silver tray beside me, while 2 men downstairs measured rooms in the townhouse for an inventory required by the divorce. Governance modernization. I called Richard. He answered, You voted me out of my own foundation. It is not your foundation. You named it after our family. That does not make it private property. I built the donor network. I know. Then why? Because every meeting has become about the divorce. That is your fault. Maybe, but the foundation still has to function. The company has to function. The foundation has to function. Does everything in your life function better without me? He did not answer quickly enough. I hung up. By midnight, a 38-second phone video from the Mercer Gala was online. It showed me at the microphone accusing my son, Richard, stepping beside me, and the exact moment he told a room full of clients and donors that I had forged part of a board memo. The clip did not include the months before it. It did not include Colorado, the medications, the apartment, the trusts, or the fear. It included my face, perfect hair, black silk, diamonds, and Richard saying, I filed for divorce this morning. For 3 days, I was the society wife who forged a board document to keep control of her husband. Then the internet moved on, but people I knew did not. Invitations changed. Lunches became harder to schedule. Women who had once called me for advice suddenly became very busy. Nobody was openly cruel. They simply stopped asking. I still had friends, but I learned quickly how many had really belonged to Richard's position or the Caldwell name. Julian visited me in October. By then, Richard had been living downtown for 5 months. The divorce was not final, but emotionally it had ended long before the lawyers caught up. Julian found me in the breakfast room reviewing apartment listings. You're moving? He asked. I am being displaced. You have a settlement that can buy half the apartments on that page. Do not exaggerate. I'm not. I closed the laptop. What do you want? To see you. You have seen me. He sighed and sat down. He looked more like Richard every year. That used to comfort me. Now it felt like an ambush. Dad stepping back from day-to-day work after the Los Angeles project launches, he said. I laughed. So he destroyed his marriage to spend more time at a company he is now leaving. He's not leaving it. He'll remain design chairman. Of course. He wants to design again. He is 66. Julian's eyes lifted. I heard myself. Again. He can design at 80 if he wants, Julian said. I know. No, Mom. I don't think you do. I looked out the window. Traffic moved below us. What do you want from me? I asked. I want you to stop fighting me like I left you. You chose him. I chose the company. That was not the answer I expected. I turned back. Julian continued. If Dad had tried to interfere with the acquisition the way you did, I would have shut him out too. You expect me to believe that? Yes. He is the founder, and I am the CEO. There it was again. My company. My son had become the thing Richard always wanted him to become. Independent. Even from us. Especially from us. I hated that I was proud of him. Are you happy? I asked. With what? With all of this? No. Do you blame me? He was quiet. Partly, I swallowed. And him? Partly. And yourself? Yes. That was Julian. Always maddeningly balanced when I wanted loyalty. He stood to leave. At the door, he stopped. Mom. What? You should take the apartment on Park Avenue, the one with the terrace. I stared at him. You looked at my listings? You left the screen open. You hate Park Avenue. I hate parking on Park Avenue. Different issue. I almost smiled. Then he left. I did not buy the apartment. I bought a smaller one farther downtown because I could pay for it entirely in my own name. No trusts. No family office. No Caldwell entity. Just me. I should say that felt empowering. It did not. It felt small. The divorce became final in January. 37 years took 12 minutes in court. Richard wore a gray suit. I wore navy. We sat at opposite tables while lawyers used words like equitable, transfer, release, and separate property. When it was finished, Richard came toward me in the hallway. For one horrible second, I thought he might hug me. He did not. I'm sorry, he said. I looked at him. For which part? He gave a tired smile. Most of it. I wanted to say something devastating, something he would remember for the rest of his life. Instead, I asked, Are you going back to the office? Yes, of course he was. What are you working on? A library. Where? Phoenix. I nodded. Then he said, Goodbye, Evelyn. I did not answer. I watched him walk toward the elevator. His lawyer followed him. Mine asked whether I wanted the car brought around. I said no. I walked outside. It was freezing. For 37 years, there had always been a Caldwell car somewhere nearby. That morning, I stood on the courthouse steps alone and opened a rideshare app because I did not know the subway route home. That was when it hit me. Not at the gala. Not when Richard exposed my lie in front of everyone. Not when the foundation removed me. Not even when the judge finalized the divorce. It hit me while a black Honda Accord stopped at the curb and the driver rolled down the window. Evelyn? Just Evelyn. No Mrs. Caldwell, no board chair, no founder's wife. Nobody waiting for me at an office, a townhouse, a foundation dinner, or a family meeting. I got into the back seat. My phone buzzed before we pulled away. A news alert. Caldwell. Design Holdings. Announces. Record year. Julian Caldwell. To consolidate family voting control. Below it was a photograph of Julian and Richard standing together in front of a model of the new Phoenix Library. Richard looked thinner than he had a year earlier. He also looked alive. I stared at the picture until the screen went dark. The driver glanced at me in the mirror. Where to? I gave him the address of my new apartment. And for the first time in almost 40 years, there was no Caldwell anything waiting for me when I got there.